We are live, and today, friends, we are talking about domicile. Domicile. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm going to be giving you my best advice on how to crush the domicile issue. If you don't know me, my name is Josh Goldstein. I'm an immigration lawyer, and I help people reach their immigration goals. I'm based in Los Angeles. We also have an office in Boston on the East Coast. We're opening other offices very soon across the country, and we help people regardless of their location across the world, wherever you are. We help people reach their immigration goal. And one of the obstacles standing in the way of your immigration goal might be domicile. And I'm going to explain to you how to crush this issue. But before I do, I want to let you know that I'm going to be taking questions from the crowd. We are live on every platform. We have a YouTube channel, which is very important to us. We're on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. We're on our Facebook page, and also we have a Facebook group with 15,000 active members where we discuss visa delay issues and the solutions. But today it's all about domicile. Now, why should you care about domicile? Why is it important? If you want to file a petition for your wife or your husband or your children or your parents or your brothers or your sister, if you want to file a petition, you have to be domiciled in the United States. That means you have to live in the United States. If you don't live in the United States, or you've spent a lot of time outside the United States, then that's where the problems come in. Because the consulate may request what they want to see proof of domicile. And if they want to see proof of domicile, how do you deal with that? What should you do in response? Well, a lot of times what happens is, like I had a client who he fell in love and he met someone in Colombia. And so he, as a US citizen, moved to Colombia to be with his wife. And while her paperwork was pending, it took a good year and a half, maybe 2 years for this to get processed. He was living in Colombia with her. And the consulate responded and asked for proof of domicile. Well, what his intentions were is to move back to the US once the case got approved. And that's fine. But to get through the issue of domicile, we have to prove that this person truly intends to move back to the US upon the approval of the case. You have to prove that you've taken steps towards achieving domicile. So what I love to show here are some ideas. This is a creative exercise, but nevertheless, these are ideas that you can use to crush domicile. First of all, you can provide a driver's license, a state driver's license in the US. If you have a state driver's license, that means that you live in the state. So if you show a copy of your driver's license, then that would help. If you are a US citizen, you can register to vote and then provide proof that you've registered to vote. Voter registration requires that you provide proof that you're living in a particular address. You can show library cards. You can show utility bills. You can show a lease. You can show that you own real estate, car registration, car insurance, medical insurance, proof that you are enrolled in school, proof that you have a job, proof that you've looked for a job. How about an affidavit? You could write a formal sworn statement saying that upon the approval of the case, you plan to move back, and this is the house that you've rented, and this is you've applied for jobs here and there and there. I mean, that's another idea. You can keep going on and on and on. But if you're not able to address the domicile issue, okay, if you don't persuade the consulate that you truly live in the US or plan to move to the US, your case is toast. It's done. It's not going to get approved. So it's something to take very seriously. It's something to take very seriously. But most people who do go through the petition process probably do plan to move back to the US. And sometimes the opposite is true. We have cases where people want to hire us and they say, I want to petition for my children, but I live in China and I have no intention of moving to the US. If that's the case, you simply don't qualify. You don't qualify at all. So you have to make sure that you do qualify. That is the domicile issue. What questions do you have about domicile, about visas, about visa delays, about anything else? There's another topic that is on my mind, and I'll get to that in a bit. But I want to welcome today to our stage, I want to welcome Hale. How do you say your last name? Chitsazan?
Yes, that's correct. Hi,
Chitsazan.
happy Halloween.
Yes, for those who are, for those on TikTok and Instagram, you can't see Hale, but she is the admin who helps us with a Telegram group that we have. It's called Visas for Iranians, and it is intended for the Persian community, who is such an important part of our world. And many of our clients come from the Persian community, but many don't. We have people who are from all walks of life, from every country in the world, from every religion, background, lack of religion, you name it. Our firm is, our door is warmly welcoming to all. So Hale, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for asking, and you look great as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, let's get right into it. Hale has some great questions for me, I'm sure. What's on your mind?
Yeah, of course, there are many questions that we received from our audience.
Okay.
And yeah, let's get it started. The first question is from one of our friends. He asked that about my K1 visa. My fiance has been living in Iran for 1 year, but before that, he lived in the US. The embassy asked us to send proof of domicile. We sent his driver's license and lease agreement for next year, but they ask us for more proof of domicile. If we send more documents, it will solve the problem, or my fiance must be in the US.
Okay. So the question is, someone petitioned for a fiance visa, and in response to the request for proof of domicile, they sent a lease for next year and a driver's license. And the consulate said, no, this is not good enough. So the question is, should they try to send more proof of domicile, or should they should the person move back to the US? Well, I guess the question, if I had this person in front of me right now, I would ask them, I would say, listen, where do you live right now? Are you living in Iran or are you living in the US? And I think the person would likely say, I'm living in Iran. And then I would say, if this case is fortunate enough to get approved and your fiance is given a visa to come to the US, what are you going to do? And I think that the person would say, well, I plan to move to the US with my fiance. If this is true, then that person should move now, right now, in advance of the visa getting resolved. They should then begin to provide proof that they actually do, in fact, live in the US. Extensive proof, irrefutable proof, definitive proof that they are in the US, that they live in the US. They should provide extensive proof that they live in the US. They should be in the US, and then they should send that to the consulate and get that resolved. They should not half-ass it, which is to say, I'm in Iran, I'm going to provide some proof that in the future I might go there once it's approved. Why cut it close? Instead, I want them to send in so much evidence, such probative, persuasive evidence that no reasonable person could ever look at the evidence and think this person is not in the US.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because if they're unable to persuade the consulate that they actually live in the US, that the domicile issue is satisfied, that visa is not going to get approved. nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, I see. This is one of the situations that the applicant can cause a delay for his or her own case. And I think it's very important that our friends can be aware of that. You should prove your domicile of the petitioner.
Yes.
Just let me translate that for our friend. دوستی پرسیدن که نامزدشون الان توی ایران هستن ولی در واقع سال گذشته امریکا بودن برای ویزای
When it comes to
کیهان.
domicile, you got to hit it out of the park. Now, let's take some more questions from the crowd.
Of course.
What is on your mind? Let me take some questions. Josh, green card renewal, how long to get a new one? This is from TikTok. Well, I guess there's two types of green card renewals in my opinion. One is an I-751 and the other is an I-90. The I-751 is for someone that has a 2-year marriage and they're looking to get a green card that's a 10-year permanent green card. And that's not so much a renewal as a reapplication. So you have to submit proof that your relationship is strong and ongoing. And secondly, there's the I-90. Now, I would say the I-751 is going to take 2 years, and the I-90, which is a renewal of a 10-year green card, is going to take about 1 year. Now, if you have a 10-year permanent green card and you're going to renew it, my favorite question to ask people is, hey, have you ever thought about applying for naturalization? Why renew your 10-year green card? Why not get rid of the 10-year green card entirely and get yourself a US passport? And I have to say on that note, I had a wonderful experience this week where I got contacted by a client that I worked with more than 10 years ago. This person was in deportation proceedings. And I won their case in immigration court. I got them a green card as a defense to deportation. They have, the person had a wife and 3 beautiful children. He's Dominican. We got him a green card and now he's in the process of renewing his, we helped him renew his green card. Now he's getting his naturalization and it's kind of like a capstone to his immigration journey. And it made me extremely happy.
Oh, that's great, Josh. Well done.
All right, let's go to some more questions.
Of course. The next one is that, can you be domiciled but not resident?
No. Domicile means that you physically live in the US. That's what domicile means.
Yeah, because I see some applicants that they are living with their husbands in Iran, but because their husband has job and house and everything in the US, sometimes they can get the visa. I don't know how, but
domicile means residency, physical residency, not just a lease where you don't live there, not just a driver's license when you don't live in the state. Domicile means, where do you live? And people try to twist themselves into a pretzel. Oh, what do you mean by where do I live? Like if I met you socially at dinner and I said, oh, hi, I'm Josh, where do you live? You would say where you physically live, right? It's not complicated. That's what domicile means. And the domicile should be very easy if you in fact live in a place.
Perfect. دوست پرسیدن که آیا دامسایل بودن به معنی رزیدنت بودن هستش و اینکه اینها هر دو به یک معنی هست. شما زمانی دامسایل هستین که در واقع توی امریکا زندگی بکنید. اگر که توی امریکا زندگی نمی کنید، حتی اونجا خونه دارید یا در واقع حساب بانکی دارید، اینها کافی نیست و شما باید مقیم در واقع توی امریکا اقامت داشته باشید. Makes sense. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to some more questions.
Of course. The next one is I uploaded my driver license and tax return, but they didn't accept my domicile. I traveled to Iran temporarily because my wife is alone and I will come back to the US soon. What should I send to NBC?
Okay, so the question is, the person uploaded some tax returns and what else?
And a driver license.
And a driver's license. And that wasn't enough. The person is in Iran. What should they do? Well, first of all, they should come back to the US and they should provide proof that that's where they live. So let's just, as a creative exercise, talk about how would you prove that you're living in the US? Someone doesn't believe that you're living in the US. They're very skeptical. How would you prove that? Well, driver's license is nice. It's not enough. Do you own a car? Do you have car insurance? Do you have medical insurance? Do you have a job where you get a paycheck? Do you have, um, you know, have you been to the doctor? Um, you have utility bills, internet bills. You can go on and on and on, but those are some ways. If you're a US citizen, did you register to vote? Because you have to swear under the pains and penalties of perjury that you live at a particular address when you register to vote. And you're not going to commit perjury if you're doing that. But what are some other ways that you could prove that you live at a particular address? You just have to be creative and ask yourself these questions. What are some ways to do that? And I think a driver's license is part of the equation, but it's not enough. It's not enough.
Yeah, I see. And should they upload the most recent documents, like the most recent pay stub, or they should, upload different pay stub from a time range?
Okay, so when you're trying to prove domicile, should you include one pay stub, your most recent, or should you include more pay stubs? Well, I don't know. I mean, if you're trying to prove domicile, should you submit a little bit of evidence or should you submit a lot of evidence? Why not? It's very easy to submit 5 pay stubs or 25 pay stubs instead of just one pay stub. I think that the problem with the domicile issue is that there are people who don't actually live in the US who are trying to prove that they live in the US when they do not. That's the issue. Because if you actually do live in the US, proving that you live in the US should not be complicated. You go to school in the US full time, you have a job full time, you have a gym membership, health insurance, financial documents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the best way to prove it.
Yeah, I know. Because many families are far away for years, and sometimes they cannot wait anymore, and they want to travel and see their family and come back, and.
Well, there's nothing wrong with traveling to see your family, but if you leave the U.S. and you don't live in the U.S., then you're not going to be able to bring your family to the U.S. So the goal of your immigration case is to get your family their visas so that they can move to the U.S. and that the family can be together in the U.S. And if you don't meet the domicile requirement, which will require you to be separated from your family temporarily, but if you don't meet that requirement, then you're basically deciding to live outside the US and your family's not going to get their objective. So the whole immigration case is going to come crashing down.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
Yes.
going to take a few questions from the crowd here. Mark on TikTok says, can I apply for an N400 if I have a felony in the past? That is a great question. Now it depends on the felony. If you have a murder conviction and you say what does it mean to be in the past? Are we talking about, last week? That was in the past. Yesterday was in the past. Or are we talking about 25 years ago? That was also in the past. So I think I would want to see what type of criminal conviction was this? When did it happen? And then, when it comes to timing, for naturalization, you have to prove that you're a person of good moral character to be approved. But the good moral character period is only for 5 years. So, or 3 years, depending on how you apply. So if the felony happened more than 5 years ago, that would be helpful. And if it happened more recently, then it might make sense to wait. But the answer really depends on the nature of the case. I'm going to take one more question here from Instagram. One of our friends joined us and says, I have not received my Social Security and USCIS request for medical, and the case is being actively reviewed after they receive the medical. I'm not sure what the question is, but it sounds like you haven't gotten your Social Security card and you have a request for a medical. So for the Social Security card, you can contact the Social Security Administration and see what's going on. And for the medical, if they requested the medical exam, then you should go and do the medical exam. And whenever people do a medical exam for immigration purposes, I always warn them that the medical exam is not an exam like you would have with your own private doctor. In fact, the doctor conducting the medical exam is an immigration officer in a sense, should be considered as an immigration officer. And people should be very careful about answering the questions the doctor asks, especially when it comes to the use of marijuana. Because if you admit to using marijuana, then your immigration case is going to be in deep trouble. So you want to be very, very careful about that. Hale, let's go to some more questions.
Of course, good to know that in each live you mentioned many things that I'm learning from you, Josh.
Yes, marijuana is a source of a lot of immigration problems. Very careful. If you're a U.S. citizen and you live in California, the use of marijuana is decriminalized and it's very common, at least here in Los Angeles. No judgment. But if you're an immigrant or applying for a green card or a visa and you admit to using marijuana, that is not going to end well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. It's very helpful. The next question is from one of our friends. She says that I live in my cousin's house. Does he need to write a letter or something to prove I live there?
Well, I guess the question, I would need a little more evident context. Why does this person need to prove that they live somewhere?
I think for domicile.
For domicile. Well, a letter from your cousin saying that you live in a particular location, that is a form of evidence. I don't think it's evidence that would be given much weight. I don't think if someone says, hey, I live here, I don't think that would be given a lot of weight. So it's nice, but I would want to include a lot more information. Something that cannot be refuted, such as pay stubs, showing that you work every day, that you have a job. You could submit proof that you drive through a toll booth every day. You have to be creative, but you really don't want anyone to. You don't want to lose this issue. You want to really win it. And if you have a letter from your cousin saying, "Hey, Josh lives on 123 Main Street. I own the house," that's nice, but I don't think that's not gonna be definitive proof that you live at a particular address.
اوکی پرفکت. دوستی پرسیدن که ایشون توی خونه یکی از کازناشون زندگی میکنن و برای دامسال آیا لازم هستش که ایشون نامه‌ای بنویسن یا برگه آماده کنن که نشون بده ایشون اونجا زندگی میکنن، چون در واقع اجاره‌نامه ندارن. و پاسخ این هستش که اینکه شما این نامه رو ارائه کنید چیز خوبیه، ولی به اندازه کافی قوی نیست که بتونه دامسایل شما رو ثابت کنه. به همین خاطر شما میتونید مثلا فیش حقوقیتون رو بفرستین، مدارک مربوط به کارتون رو بفرستین، درایور لایسنس بفرستین و همینطور مدارک دیگه. Okay, makes sense, perfect. And you know what? My younger sister, when she went to Abu Dhabi for her interview, the officer told her the domicile is not enough. You should give us more proof of domicile, and your mother should get back to the US. And you know, after maybe 6 months or 1 year, you should apply for another interview. And it was very stressful for my sister and us.
Yeah.
And I think it's very helpful that you are sharing many things, many points and insights about domicile to our
So,
friends.
so let me dig into this. So at the time, where was the mother living?
In Iran. My
Well,
mother, yeah, came back for it as travel, you know.
right. So you're not going to get any visas if the petitioner doesn't live in the U.S.
Yeah,
So that's it. So
my
your
go.
mother in that situation, if I were the lawyer and I were talking to your mother, I would say, listen, how serious are you about getting this case approved? How serious are you? How committed are you to helping your children get their visa so that they can have a new life in the US? Because if you don't care, just keep living in Iran. Just keep living outside the US. But if you do care, get on a plane, go back to the US, and don't come back until you have gotten this case approved and generate all the evidence, because the evidence is quite simple.
Yeah.
What's not simple is convincing someone to live in the US when they would prefer not to.
Yeah, you know, because sometimes I see people think it's just a travel, you know. I'm not gonna live in Iran. I just wanna, you know, take a trip and just see my family.
Well, that's true, but that's not what's required. What's required is that you live in the US. And of course, you're not a prisoner. If you live in the US, you can travel, you're free to go. But what you can't do is travel, stay outside the US for so long or travel so frequently that people start to wonder, where do you really live? The word domicile should be replaced with residence or living, um, because the word domicile is kind of a legal term that sounds confusing, but it's actually a simple term meaning that you have to live physically in the US. Let's take a question from YouTube. Our friend Shafquat Rasul, thank you for tuning in. Says here, my wife's a US citizen, but she's not doing any job. Can she sponsor me for a spousal visa? The answer is yes, she can. But the issue is that if she doesn't have a job, then she probably needs a joint sponsor for the affidavit of support. That's not a big deal. Um, so here's another question from Janil on YouTube. On the I-45, if you're filing concurrently, that means you're filing together with your visa petition. Under what section? Under the section where they ask you to attach your Evans I-797 approval notice, what do you do? Well, you don't have an approval notice if you're filing it concurrently because you're filing both applications at the same time. We typically file the two applications together in the same envelope. Is it better to file online and file them separately or together? Well, when you file concurrently, you're filing the forms together. And whether it's better to do that depends on your case. So I would have to know the facts. But if you need help or have questions, reach out to us. So that is a few questions. Let's take another question from Facebook. Hi, Josh. I live in Europe. We applied for a K1 visa, and I'm currently under AP administrative processing. My interview was on July 23rd. No update. Is there a problem if I travel to visit my family in Iraq while under AP? Second question, how much longer should I wait before hiring a lawyer? Well, I'm very sorry to hear that your fiance visa is stuck in administrative processing. Um, I think that there is a lot of debate or speculation as to whether traveling while in administrative processing is going to make administrative processing take longer. And there's really no way to answer that question because nobody knows what, if anything, that the government is actually doing when you're in administrative processing. So whether an additional trip to Iraq would make things take longer or not is a matter of pure speculation. I don't know. Um, but I think that you have to live your life. If you need to visit your family and friends, or you have a compelling reason to travel, you should do so. And as to when you should consider hiring a lawyer like me to challenge the administrative processing delay, I think that the question of how long you should wait is a good one. And I think that you should ask yourself, how important is it to you to get your visa delayed urgently, rapidly? And how important is this to you? And what would be the cost to you of continuing to wait? You know, a lot of people have asked me whether the situation in Israel, Gaza, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, whether this regional conflict is going to have an impact on visa processing and visa delays. And the answer is that the future is unknowable. We don't know what will happen in the future. And this conflict is incredibly sad for all of the innocent people in the region. But I also worry about people waiting for their visas in Europe, in the Middle East, and so on, because I don't think it's going to be easier to get your visa in the future. And I could see consulates in the region perhaps closing or limiting their processing times. So there's the best time to get your immigration case resolved is right now. So I think you should take action quickly. And I'm going to go to another question from Safiq. It says here, Shafqat, does age difference between me and my fiance affect the case? Yes, it does. So to get a fiance visa approved, you have to show that the underlying relationship is genuine, that you truly do plan to get married and live your life together as married couples do. But when there is a significant age difference, sometimes the consulate can be very skeptical that the relationship is genuine. Now, I'm not here to judge anyone. I believe that love can come in many forms, and people's ages are not significant. I think people should be with the one that they love. But I think also it's true that the consulates are skeptical, and especially when the woman is significantly older than the man. Now, again, I'm not here to judge women who have younger partners. I want to help everyone reach their immigration goal. I just think that you have to be realistic and know that sometimes consulates are skeptical. And I have found that consulates sometimes deny cases like this. And the women and men who are the petitioners, they're heartbroken. But the consulate just thinks that the younger person is taking the older U.S. citizen for a ride, and that it's not genuine. But we take such cases, we try our best to win them, and so on. So, what other questions do you have, Hallie?
Oh, the next question is that how do I know if I'm domiciled? One of the petitioner asked us.
How do you know if you are domiciled? Okay, so I think that the question should be, I think the person's question is, how do I know if I'm domiciled in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I would ask the person this question. If I met you in a restaurant socially and someone introduced me to you and I said to you, oh, hi, I'm Josh. And you said, oh, hello. And then I said, well, so where do you live? What would you answer to that question? If the question were, where do you live? What would you say? And if you live in Florida, you have a job in Florida, you have a car in Florida, you have a house in Florida, you register to vote in Florida, your life is in Florida, then you would say, oh, I live in Miami. I live in Key Biscayne, Florida. If you have spent the last 9 months in Germany, and you have no immediate plans to move back to the U.S., and I met you in Cologne in a restaurant in Germany, and I said, oh, hi, I'm Josh. Where do you live? You'd say, oh, I live in Cologne in this neighborhood over here.
Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah.
a simple question. Where do you live? It's not complicated. It's not complicated. And I think that the person who asked this question probably doesn't live in the U.S. They're probably trying to prove domicile, but they don't live in the U.S.
Yeah, I think they are looking for a rule or a formula to actually deliver some evidence, but there isn't any formula, right? We cannot say, for example, you can travel only for 2 weeks or 1 month and they should come back.
It's very simple. Get on a plane, go to the U.S., stay there, get a job in the U.S., get a car, register to vote, build your life in the U.S., and stop trying to pretend that you live in the U.S. when you don't. It's not hard. I mean, you might be separated from your family in this scenario. You're trying to help your loved ones, your fiance, your husband, your wife, your parents. You're trying to help someone you love get a visa to the U.S. But to do that, you have to go to the U.S. and live there away from them. And that's just a cost of getting the immigration case approved. That's it.
Yeah, I see. دوستی پرسیدن که من از کجا بدونم که دامستایل هستم و پاسخ این هستش که اگر شخصی از شما بپرسه که شما الان دارین کجا زندگی میکنید، فرض کنید یکی از دوستانتون این سوال رو بپرسن، شما چی جواب میدین؟ اگر که امریکا باشین میگین من مثلا توی فلوریدا زندگی میکنم و اگر خونه‌تون، زندگیتون، کارتون اونجا هست. ولی اگر برای مثال 9 ماهه که شما آلمان هستین و اونجا زندگی میکنید، میگید که من دارم آلمان زندگی میکنم. یعنی در واقع به همین سادگی اگر بتونین جواب این سوال رو بدین، متوجه میشین که دامستایل هستین یا نه. شما حتما باید امریکا باشین و حتما باید مدارک کافی برای اثبات زندگیتون توی امریکا داشته باشین. Sounds great, Josh.
What other questions do you have for me?
Of course. The next one is that I'm the main sponsor and I don't have a job. I live in my brother's house, so I don't have a rental agreement. My bank statement is old because I closed my bank account. What kind of proof should I send for domicile?
Okay, so the person is trying to prove domicile. They live with a family member, and they don't have a bank account, right?
Yeah.
Do they have a job?
No, unfortunately.
Okay, they don't have a job. They don't have they live with a family, and they don't have a bank account.
Yeah.
How do you not have a bank account? I mean, that would be one question. Where's your money? Do you bury it in your backyard? Do you not have any money? Do you have a driver's license? Do you have a car? How do you, what do you do every day? Do you ever go to the doctor? Do you just live in your living room and you never leave the house at all under any circumstances? I mean, I guess my question would be, is the person a U.S. citizen? If you're a U.S. citizen, are you registered to vote? Where are you registered to vote? Do you have a driver's license? If you don't have a driver's license, well, how do you drive? Well, I don't have a car. I don't drive. Get a state ID. You don't need a driver's license. Get a state ID. Do you go to the doctor? No, I never go to the doctor. Well, how do you not go to the doctor? You need an annual checkup. So do you go to the dentist? No, I never go to the dentist. Then go to the dentist. Get your teeth cleaned. What kind of animal are you? You know, go get your teeth cleaned, and then provide proof that you get your teeth cleaned. Just think logically about how you prove that you live in the U.S. If you never leave your house, you never go to the doctor, you never go to the dentist, you don't have a bank account. I mean, it is reasonable to open a bank account. My 5-year-old wanted a bank account because he has $50 and he thought it was cool to have a bank. Open a bank account. Even if you don't have any money, just open a bank account so you have some financial presence in the U.S. I mean, it sounds funny, but it's not funny because people's immigration cases are being denied based on this issue.
Yeah, I know.
It's
Yeah.
a lack of effort. This is just a lazy question. This person needs to treat this issue with the importance that it deserves. Your life, your family's well-being depends on proving that you live in the U.S. You have to do it. How are you going to do this? Just think creatively and logically about this. If you say, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have the other thing, you're not going to get anywhere. It's not going to get a visa. So you have to be resourceful, creative, and you need to provide proof where no one would ever doubt that you live in the U.S. Nobody would doubt.
Yeah, makes sense. Exactly.
Here's some more good questions. I have a super strange question. I like that. I'm applying for a K-1 visa, but I have a lasting power of attorney for my elderly mother. Will I have to retract that legal responsibility from my mother? I'm not sure that I understand the question because, first of all, you're a good person for taking care of your mother. We should all take care of our mothers. But why would you need to, I mean, just because you're getting engaged and getting married, why would you need to retract your legal responsibility for your mother? I'm not sure I follow why that would be true.
Yeah, I didn't get it as well.
Here's a question from Carlos De Brito, our friend on YouTube. My son is a U.S. citizen and I'm married. Can he file for both of us? No. Your son can petition for you as children can petition for their parents. But your wife, or your spouse, your son cannot petition for your spouse unless your spouse is the mother of your child. So your son can file a petition for his father and his mother, but this case does not allow for derivative beneficiaries. So if you get approved, your wife will not. So what's the solution? Well, there may not be a solution. You would get a visa and a green card and come to the U.S., and then you could petition for your wife, and that would, unfortunately, that would be something that would separate the two of you for some time, maybe several years. So you really want to think through the logistics of this and make sure that the case makes sense. Do you really want to do that? Are you up for that? It's not. There's a lot of times when it comes to immigration, there are solutions and sometimes there are not solutions. And sometimes where there are solutions, the solutions are ones that are not ideal. They're not convenient or easy or pain-free.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it's actually complicated and,
It's not easy.
sometimes frustrating.
It's nothing about this is easy.
Yeah, the immigration process is complex. Based on my own
Another
experience.
question from Hello Kitty. I was deported for attempting murder 17 years ago. Can I apply for a visa? I think if you were deported for attempted murder, I don't think the U.S. immigration system is going to be available to you. Sorry, but I just don't think it will be. Sympathy for that. Questions, Holly. What have you got for me?
A lot of questions, Josh. The next one is my mother applied for me 9 years ago. She came back to Iran to take care of my father since I'm waiting for my interview. Does she need to travel to the US before my interview? I think you already answered that.
No, she doesn't need to travel to the US before your interview. In order for the case to get approved, your mother has to be living in the US. And
Mhm.
this is another one of these complicated situations where your father is elderly and is in Iran. The mother has to leave her husband and move to the US and live in the US in order to get the visa approved for the child. And that is painful. It may not be what the family ideally wants to do. So I understand that. But there is no way around it. That's what has to happen. Not travel to the US before the interview, but live there. Because if proof of domicile is requested and the petitioner is actually living in Iran taking care of her husband, as any decent spouse should, then how are you going to manage that? You're not going to be able to prove domicile, right?
Yeah, you know that I think in this case, actually, the embassy approved the domicile and gave her an interview appointment. So she's going to the interview, but she's worried about the travel of her mom. Maybe, it's a short-term travel.
Right.
At the time of interview, does she need to be in the US?
The case is not approvable unless the mother lives in the US.
Mhm.
Lives there.
Yeah.
Not travels to the US, but lives in the US.
Okay, perfect.
And that is something that they probably are not doing.
Yeah, I see. دوستی پرسیدن که مادرشون 9 سال پیش براشون درخواست دادن و الان به خاطر بیماری پدرشون مادر برگشتن ایران و دارن از ایشون مراقبت میکنن و خود اپلیکنت هم وقت مصاحبه گرفتن. پرسیدن که آیا در زمان مصاحبه من مادرم که پتیشنر هست باید امریکا باشه و پاسخ این هستش که ایشون باید توی امریکا زندگی بکنن، نه فقط در واقع در حال سفر باشن و آفیسر باید متقاعد بشن که ایشون زندگیشون توی امریکا هستش. Makes sense. Actually, it's hard for them.
It is. Again, when it comes to immigration, it's not easy. If it were easy, then people wouldn't need to hire lawyers or join us on this show and answer questions. Let's take some more questions. Let's see here. What questions do you have? How soon is too soon to file for VAWA? I love my husband, but he's refusing to file for me. So VAWA is the Violence Against Women Act, and it protects the spouse of U.S. citizen and permanent residents and those who are engaged from relationships that are abusive, where there's domestic violence. She says that she loves her husband, but he's refusing to file for her. Obviously, if your husband is refusing to file for your green card, that doesn't necessarily mean that there is domestic violence going on or that it's an abusive relationship. I can see how that would be incredibly disappointing. But if I could do a consultation with this person, I would want to know a lot more about the nature of their relationship. Maybe it's just one example of the type of unhealthy, toxic dynamic that is going on that would fall within the ambit of the Violence Against Women Act. These cases are incredibly important to me. Some of the most rewarding experiences of my career have been helping people who have been in abusive relationships, and I mean, it's a very difficult scenario, but you really want to talk to a lawyer, reach out to our team. We can help you with this and do it right away. I found out my husband is still married at my interview. What should I do? Oh, Teresa asked that question. Well, I think you should consider getting a divorce, leaving him. It's hard to say. Maybe your husband didn't know that he was still married. There are all sorts of crazy things happen, but I think you want to consult with a lawyer right away. Hale, what questions more do you have?
The next question is that I uploaded the ID card, library card, and bank statement of my petitioner 1.5 years ago. I have an interview appointment next week. Should I upload new documents for domicile, or those are enough?
When it comes to sending documents, I'm a big fan of being responsive. So if you are asked for documents, then you should respond with in response to the request. But I don't think you should run around thinking about what documents to send in on your own. So that's my answer. One more question about VAWA we have here. Would narcissistic abuse count for VAWA? I think it certainly could. I think when it comes to VAWA cases, people think about domestic violence as physical violence, but it could also be behavior that is manipulative or emotionally abusive or verbally abusive, or there could be some narcissistic behavior that would cross a line, and that's very unhealthy. And I think it's great that in the United States, Congress has set up the VAWA system to protect those who are in such relationships. Do you want to translate the part about domicile?
Yeah.
Your question? I don't remember.
The previous question?
Oh, yeah. Being responsive, I said.
Yeah, being responsive, of course. دوست عزیزی پرسیدن که در واقع پتیشن مدارکی مثل آیدی کارت و کارت کتابخونه و حساب بانکی پتیشنر رو 1 سال نیم پیش توی سایت امنیستی آپلود کردن و برای هفته آینده وقت مصاحبه دارن. آیا لازم هست که این مدارک رو آپدیت بکنن و مدارک جدیدی آپلود کنن؟ پاسخ این هستش که پیشنهاد ما این هست که ریسپانسیو باشین، یعنی اگر از شما مدارک خواستن اون زمان شما مدارک رو آپلود کنید، ولی اگر نخواستن دنبال این نباشین که خودتون برین مدارک جدید آپلود کنید. Makes sense?
Okay. What other questions do you have for us?
The next one is that I just got my visa, RUR1 case, and I'm going to travel to the US while my husband will stay with our daughter in Iran. Will they ask me at the airport why your husband lives in Iran?
And her husband's a petitioner?
Yeah, husband is the petitioner and she got her visa.
Okay, so let's just play this out. She got a visa based on marriage. And in order to get such a visa, her husband had to prove domicile. So her husband had to prove that he lives in the US. But actually, he doesn't live in the US. He lives in Iran. So if this case were properly reviewed, she shouldn't have gotten the visa, right?
Yeah.
Because the domicile issue was not met.
Yeah.
So now she's worried, understandably, that by traveling to the US, her husband's not in the US. What if they start asking questions at the airport? Where's your husband? Where does he live? What's she going to do? And the answer, I think, is that she's in trouble. And that her husband should probably try and travel with her back to Iran I mean, back to the U.S. And once she gets the green card, then the domicile issue is over. But in the meantime, I would probably advise her to travel to the U.S. with her husband, and her husband should think carefully about what he would do if they asked for proof of domicile at the airport, right?
Oh, I see.
What would he
After
show?
getting the visa, yeah.
What if she goes to the airport and they take the visa away and they cancel it? And the officer
Oh
says,
my
this has
God.
been issued,
That
right?
that would be very risky. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? Um, I get calls like this all the time from people. And when things go wrong, and they often do, people call me, and some cases are fixable and some aren't. So I think that you really want to think carefully about this.
Of course. دوستی پرسیدن که از طرف ویزای آیاروان کیسشون آیاروان بوده و الان ویزاشون رو گرفتن. همسر ایشون که پتیشنر هستن توی ایران پیش دخترشون موندن و ایشون میخوان سفر کنن امریکا و گرین کارتشون رو بگیرن. سوالشون این هستش که آیا توی فرودگاه از من میپرسن که همسرت کجا هست و تو چرا تنهایی سفر کردی؟ و پاسخ این هستش که بله این موضوع ریسکیه و ممکنه که همونجا مدارک دامسایل همسرتون رو بخوان و ویزاتون باطل بشه. بنابراین توصیه ما این هستش که حتما همسر شما همراهتون به آمریکا بیان که شما بتونید در واقع وارد خاک امریکا بشین. Okay, that's good to know. And next question is, my husband is a US citizen and he applied for me and our 2 daughters last year.
Okay.
Yeah. As proof of domicile, we provided a letter that our joint sponsor says he will rent 2 rooms of his house to us when we enter the US. NBC accepted this agreement for my daughter's cases, but rejected that for mine. Why does this happen?
Well, let's ask a different way. So, proof of domicile, they submitted a letter from a friend or family member that says, when you get to the US, you can stay at my place.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Does that sound like very good proof of domicile?
No, actually.
It doesn't sound good at all. That sounds terrible. That sounds really, really weak. That sounds weak. And if I were the lawyer on the case, I would really push back against this. And I would say, listen, are you kidding me? Are you serious about getting this case approved, or are you just messing around? Because it doesn't look like you're serious. If you're serious about getting this case approved, then what you need to do is go to the airport and get on a plane, go to the US and get a driver's license and get a library card and open a bank account and sign up for health insurance and get a job and actually move to the US and provide definitive proof that you live in the US, that you live in the US. And if you say, oh, but Josh, I'm going to have to leave my family. And yep, you are. But guess what? If you want to move to the US and you want to get the case approved, then this is what you got to do. You're setting up shop so that when your family gets approved, they can move to the US with you. And if you stay in your home country and you don't take the domicile issue seriously, then it's going to end in tears.
Oh my God, yeah. I think that would be the worst scenario, and I hope our friends in Iran take this seriously. That
There's never been a better time to leave Iran and move to the US. Or whatever country you're in.
Yeah.
If your goal is to move to the US, then take it seriously. And don't cut corners, and don't be lazy. You know, a letter from your friend saying that you can stay with me when you get to the US is nice. But what if an officer is skeptical? What if they don't believe that?
Yeah. And she's wondering why they accept this letter as the document for their daughters, but not for her case.
Well, I have no way of answering that. Maybe one officer didn't review it carefully and the other did. But that's not the right question. The
Yeah.
right question is not why did my weak evidence get accepted in one case but not another? The answer is the better question is, how do I take this weak evidence and make it really strong so that I have a successful case? That's the question you should be asking, not how come my weak evidence got approved over here but not over there?
I
There's
see.
no answer to that.
I see. Yeah, you're right. دوستی پرسیدن که همسرشون برای خودشون و دو تا دخترشون درخواست دادن و مدارک دامسایل ازشون خواستن. یک نامه دادن که قرار وقتی وارد امریکا بشن توی خونه جوینت اسپانسر زندگی کنن و این مدرک رو امریسه برای دختر رو قبول کرده ولی برای خود اپلیکن قبول نکرده و سوالشون این بود که چرا این اتفاق افتاده. پاسخ این هستش که این مدرک ضعیفی هست برای دامسایل شما و همسر شما باید برن امریکا جاب بگیرن، در واقع درایورز لایسنس بگیرن، مدارک رو تکمیل کنن که اون مدارک دامسایل شما قوی باشه و بهتره که اتکا نکنید روی یک نامه‌ای که خیلی نمیتونه چیزی رو ثابت بکنه. Perfect. And could you please introduce our Telegram channel to our...
Yes. We have a Telegram channel, and it is exclusively devoted to visa and other immigration issues that impact the Persian community. And it's called Visas for Iranians. That's the title. It's on Telegram. And there is Farsi language content that we share there that we don't share anywhere else. And I'm going to put it up now in YouTube. Visas for Iranians, one word. It's something I'm very proud of. Of course, our firm is open to all, not just Persians. We have clients from Somalia, Mexico, Canada, Germany, Togo, Tahiti, you name it. We have clients from everywhere, and we're very proud to be a place that's welcoming to all. Our staff is from many different countries, many different religions, and we have lots of clients who are from the LGBTQ community, and we consider ourselves allies for them. So, yeah, we are open to all. What other questions do you have for us, Halle?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, let's go to the next question. The next one is that if a petitioner has a job, does she need to provide a lease agreement as well?
Okay, so in what context is this the question is, I have a job, do I have to provide a lease?
As well, yeah.
As well. So what context is this information being provided?
Actually, she is a petitioner and she wants to know what documents she needs to provide to embassy because, yeah.
Why? What issue?
She applied for her father and she's uploading the documents and she wants to know because now she lives in a family member house.
Are we still talking about domicile? Or are we talking about some other issue?
Yeah, and domicile actually.
Okay. Yeah. So the question is, this person is trying to prove that they live in the U.S., right?
Yes.
And the question is, should they submit a lease agreement, or should they submit proof that they have a job, but not a lease agreement?
Yeah, she only has a job and she doesn't have any lease or contract. She wants to know, is it enough?
Okay, so now I understand the question. This person is trying to prove domicile. They have a job in the U.S. Should they just provide proof of uh, pay stubs, or should they provide additional evidence? And I think that having a job in the US is probably very persuasive proof that they live in the US, but not necessarily, because someone could be getting a paycheck um, in the US even when they don't live in the US. So I would want to submit the driver's license, car insurance, medical insurance. If the person, where does this person live? Do they own real estate, provide a deed, mortgage payments? Do they have a lease? Apparently not. But if they don't have a lease, where do they live? Do they live with a friend or a family member? Maybe there's no formal lease, but they could get a sworn affidavit from this person saying that they live with them, and that they pay rent, or maybe they don't pay rent. And you should rack your brain and be creative and be resourceful and ask yourself, what more can I send? How can I send more evidence and be more persuasive instead of just sending in a paycheck? How do I provide more proof that I live in the US? Maybe a bank account. You got a bank account that shows that you fill up your car with gas every 2 or 3 weeks. That shows that you drive in the US.
Oh, perfect.
Or you
Yeah.
got a parking ticket. There you go. You live in the US. And sometimes people say, "Oh, I don't drive. I don't have a car." Okay, well, how do you get around? You take Uber? Okay, let's show me the transactions. Oh, I don't take Uber. I take the bus. I take the metro. Well, did you buy a bus ticket? Like, let's see the proof, Like, let's be serious about this, and let's show me all the proof of what you've done.
Of course. دوست عزیزی پرسیدن که اگر پتیشنر شغل داره ولی اجاره نامه نداره، آیا همین کافی هست که مدارک مربوط به کارش رو در واقع سابمیت بکنه؟ پاسخ این هستش که تا جایی که میتونید مدارک بیشتری رو ارائه بدین، به خاطر اینکه ممکنه یک شخصی پیچک داشته باشه، فیش حقوقی داشته باشه، ولی توی امریکا زندگی نکنه.